That's right. Welcome in, everybody. Episode 4 of the Always Pigskin Show. It is, of course, John, always Irish, here with you. And, of course, my boy, Pigskin Pete. How are you this evening?
I'm amazing and fantastic, John. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing well myself. I don't know if I'm amazing and fantastic, but I'm doing okay.
That's okay. We can't all be amazing and fantastic.
Yeah,
so.
Obviously. So good for you. I'm happy for you. We have some good topics to go over today. It seems like people have enjoyed what we've done so far, but our mission from the beginning was to migrate possibly into some controversial territory, or maybe some things with some strong opinions, and maybe even some things that aren't even directly on-field football related, but tie into everything going on here. And we're going to start the show with one of those topics. This topic is a everyday type of reality when you're a Notre Dame person, okay? But if you're not, I think this becomes more controversial. And what we wanted to talk about today was the concept of Christianity in college football, or maybe not even Christianity, but just religion and faith in college football. Is there a place for that? How does it play? What are the upsides of letting that out as a coach, player, program, team? What are the downsides? Because there are some. And that's what we wanted to start with today. So I would like to hear your opinion on this, because mine's going to be a little different given my situation and my team and everything that goes into that. So I would like to hear your thought on this, and then we can go from there.
I don't think there's a lot of downfalls as far as it goes. I believe that this is a mostly Christian country, and if you want to throw Muslim and Jewish or whatever, and Hindu, whatever, I'm not, like you said, I'm not saying exclusively Christianity, but this is a mostly Christian country, and it's really one of the foundations of the country. And especially being in the deep South, Christianity is huge here. And listen, the city I live in is nicknamed the Holy City for a reason. There's the city of Charleston, the peninsula of Charleston, the downtown area is about 2.5 miles long and about 1.5 miles wide. It's like a little tiny Florida, little peninsula. And there's 85 churches on that peninsula. Let that sink in. There's more churches down there than there are restaurants. And so it's the backbone of the deep South. It's the backbone of really a lot of America. But the weird thing is, this is something that's happened probably over the past 20 years, loosely. There's been this weird movement in this country where if you're Christian, that's a bad thing. Or if you're religious, it's a bad thing. I'm not a religious guy. I grew up Irish Catholic, just like you did. I received all my sacraments and all that. I was a good boy. Sunday school, was in the pews every Sunday. My family, especially my mother, is still, faithful Irish Catholic. But it seems like in the media, especially in the media, and then there's also other fans that they look down upon this as if it's some sort of negative thing, and I don't understand it. Now, as far as Clemson goes, there hasn't been like an overtly Christian guy at the helm, at least in my lifetime, until Dabo Swinney came along. Now, I'm not saying that Tommy Bowden and Hatfield and West and even Danny Ford or Charlie Pell before him, I don't know, maybe there was guys were Christians too, but it wasn't like it is now. And that's a big criticism of Dabo Swinney. I say it's his biggest asset. Because if you look at recruiting for Clemson, and Dabo Swinney was the head recruiter before he ever became head coach at Clemson. And the first big blue chip player, 5-star player that he landed was a guy named CJ Spiller. You all know who CJ Spiller is. He's one of the most electric college football players from the time that he was at Clemson. And then, of course, he had maybe a 6 or 7 year stint there in the NFL. This is the reason that he chose Clemson and Dabo Swinney. And so this was a huge get. And if you go down the list after CJ Spiller, you look at guys like Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, DJ Uiagalelei, the new guy that's coming in, Will Shipley. You know Will Shipley. right? These are all guys, and that's just a handful of elite players, right? I'm talking about many, many, many more that liked the Christian aspect of Clemson and Dabo Swinney. Now, I was debating with another college football YouTuber. I won't mention his name on here, but I was debating with him. He was saying how every time Dabo Swinney gets in front of the microphone, he starts talking about Jesus and God and this and that. And I said, well, he might do that because that's the person that he is. This is not something that he just started doing when he got to Clemson. If you talk to people or if you listen to people that have known Dabo Swinney for the past 30 years, he's always been that guy. This is not something new, but he does not push it on his players. He does not require you to be a Christian to come to Clemson. He does not require you to go to church, or whatever. But he does have his own opinions, and he's very vocal about it. I don't see anything wrong with it, personally.
Okay. So I think we have two different trains of thought here at the same time. I think there's two unrelated, totally separate parts of this. One is the player component, as far as recruiting and knowing that's who your coach is and embracing that, being comfortable with it, or even if you don't buy into it, being cool with it. That's one piece. But then I think there's a media piece to this.
Oh, and absolutely. Yeah.
The media piece of this is where Dabo has been getting nailed. Mm-hmm. And so here's what I've been seeing. Now, this surprises me a little bit. Here in the Chicago market, on these local big-time sports radio stations, they don't talk college football. Chicago's like a pro town.
Yeah,
so they hardly ever talk college football. They have one 10-minute hit on a Friday leading into Saturday's games. That's it. Okay. Mm-hmm. They've been spending a lot of time talking about all the power shift dynamics in college football you and I discussed with the players and all that. But there you go. I like that. Drink up. Here's the angle I've heard from multiple writers and Chicago sports talk people about Dabo specifically. Their beef with this is when there's a difficult situation, a difficult press conference, like answering questions about the little racial issue that came up a few weeks ago from a player. The argument is that he gets up there and then says something about Christianity. We're all in this together under God's light and love and all, or whatever. And they're saying that he's using that as a cover to get out of having to answer tough questions. Because when you go down the God path, nobody can really question you that much.
I understand that criticism, but
that's the argument.
Like I just told you, earlier, a couple of minutes ago, this is who he is. This is not new.
Yeah.
And this was how he was before he was ever a coach at Clemson.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. It's not like the guy's like, oh man, I need this crutch now.
Yeah. That's
the Holy Spirit.
That's the thing is people think it's a fake thing.
Yeah.
It's not a fake thing.
Yeah.
The whole persona and personality of Dabo Swinney, it rubs people the wrong way. The ho-hum, Barney Fife type of attitude and the Jesus thing. A lot of people think that's just a facade and that's just his, what he's putting on for the cameras. Talk to people that grew up with Dabo Swinney, that played college football with Dabo Swinney, that coached with him at Alabama, that coached with him at Clemson. They all tell you this is not an act. This is who he's always been his entire life.
Yeah.
So it's if you don't like who Dabo Swinney is as a person, I mean, that's a fair criticism. I mean, we're all entitled to our opinions, but it's not an act.
Yeah. And the other argument is, and this isn't particularly on the religious spirituality component, but the other argument being made against him that I hear, and again, I want to be clear. These are people who have no interest in college football or really Clemson at all. They're Chicago sports people, but they're saying when you are the highest paid public employee in that state, you no longer get up there and say, I'm just a little old football coach and a little old football team, little old us. Wow. They're saying when you are the highest paid employee in that state, you don't get to play that card anymore. We're the little guy and he's got the best thing going in college football. So it's wearing thin on people to play the little old poor us because you ain't.
I
You
know.
ain't anymore.
Now this is a
You're
separate
not.
this is a separate issue from the religion thing.
It is. It
And
is.
I will tell you this: people don't know Dabo Swinney's a great trash talker, and he's a great troller. When he's doing that little old Clemson thing, and we get no respect, he's trolling you.
Yeah.
And if you Clemson fans know this, some of the Irish fans that are watching might not know this. If you go back to Dabo Swinney's first, maybe 3 years at Clemson, when they were losing to South Carolina every year, he had some epic back and forth trolling jobs with Steve Spurrier. Epic. I mean, Dabo is an elite trash talker. Now he's really calmed that down since they become an elite program. But when they were still, a 9-3, 8-4 team, and they were losing to South Carolina every year, he was really good at trash talking and defending Clemson. So, I think that he's taken, especially in the past 5 or 6 years, he's taken the high road, because at that point it becomes bullying. And I think I'm trying to get in the head of Dabo Swinney here.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is where that program is right now, you don't really have to say much because you're proving it out there on the field almost every year. So that helps too. You don't have to get up there and say much anymore.
But there is another part of this, though, that there is a media bias against Clemson. And I know people say, oh, Clemson fans cry more than anybody. Dabo Swinney's a big cry baby, cry. But it's true. I mean, the media attacks the ACC constantly.
Okay, but wait. You're going where I wanted to go next, because my next angle on this was going to be, and this should actually make you happy, the angle is a part of this the natural transition that happens when there's a dynasty or a team that gets really good and is making a playoff almost every year, then that team becomes hated. And so maybe that's just a part of what happens when you become that team. Everybody else gets sick of you. People look for reasons to pick you apart.
Right.
And that would be a compliment to the program, because that wouldn't happen if they weren't this good.
I'm not going to lie. There's some things that Dabo Swinney has said in the past few years that I wish that he wouldn't say and bring that sort of negative attention on Clemson, when he would be much better just leaving it alone and not saying anything, saying no comment or whatever. But again, I go back to the thing where this is just who the guy is. He's going to speak his mind. He really doesn't care what anybody thinks about what he's saying. And sometimes that's not a good thing. I mean, listen, that goes for me and you too. I mean, in everyday life, we shouldn't say everything we think. Sometimes we shouldn't get defensive when we do get defensive, but that's just part of being human. And I think he's learning as he goes. He should know by now. Dabo Swinney, another thing about him that I've learned over the years is he does not pay attention to like social media. He doesn't have a Facebook page or a Twitter account. All he knows is what he reads in the headlines of the newspapers and what people probably tell him. Yeah. Paul Feinbaum said this about you, and Stephen A. Smith said this about you, and so on and so forth. And so I think he's an emotional guy who wears his heart on his sleeve, and he reacts to it. And sometimes he probably shouldn't react the way he does, but that's also part of the thing that I love about him, or that I've grown to love about him over the years.
And that makes sense to me. And ultimately, if recruiting's going well and there aren't problems about this specific issue in-house, who the hell cares to a certain extent? Like, I just couldn't figure out, listening to the Chicago sports guys go on about this and really nail him for being fake and leaning on the crutch of religion when you're asked a tough question, and you don't get to play the little old us card when you're the highest paid employee in the whole state. I was asking myself why. Like, I just don't get why it's so intense on him right now. I really don't get it, other than that's what happens when you're the best. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. Like, if he rubs you the wrong way,
but here's the difference.
I don't see him doing anything that wrong.
If you take Nick Saban, because Nick Saban was, many consider him to be the greatest college football head coach of all time. And he has had very much recent success over the past 10 years. They've been the dynasty. And Nick Saban receives a lot of, bad press, I guess, for being sort of abrasive with the reporters and all that. But the difference is that Nick Saban never went out there and said Jesus and God in interviews. And Nick Saban never really took the Dabo Swinney route as far as going out of his way to compensate and explain away the criticisms of Alabama. He was just short with people, and he would, he would say one or two one-liners and walk off the stage, or call out a reporter and walk off the stage. But Dabo Swinney, listen, if you ask Dabo Swinney a question, his answer could be 20 minutes long, and he's very long-winded and he's just a different guy than Nick Saban is. So there's really not much of a difference between Saban and Swinney, other than Swinney is long-winded and brings God into the conversation.
Yeah, I guess I just don't understand why that's such a big deal and bothers people, I guess. Like, I really just don't. If he's not pushing it on the players or anything like that, I don't really see why this is relevant, but it's just something people have seemed to zone in on him and really turn people off. They think it's an act. I'm telling you.
I know they do.
They think it's maybe not even an act, but more of a crutch. Thinking if you answer something with God, something nobody can question it. It's a good way to soften the discussion.
I understand.
And people just think he plays both sides of it.
I understand the outside view of it, but I also understand the inside view of it, being a Clemson fan, somebody that really pays attention to what's going on there. And I always revert back, and this goes to the same thing that happened a few weeks ago with the racism thing. I mean, you saw countless players, former players, current players, coaches come out in defense of Dabo Swinney. And Dabo Swinney even said in his sort of awkward, explanation of this whole thing when he released that video, he said it really hurt him personally that these accusations were being made about him. But the difference between him and like a Mike Gundy situation when we saw that unfold is you didn't see a whole lot of players, former or current, coming out and defending Mike Gundy. But you saw a lot of players, and I'm talking about big name players too. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins and Deshaun Watson and Shaq Lawson and a lot of the current players and current coaches all came to his defense and were very, very upset about this attack on him. So that's the difference. And that's who I revert to. I don't know Dabo Swinney, never met him a day in my life. He could be a KKK member for all I know, which I'm being facetious here. But the point is, I refer to the people that know him and have known him for years and work with him day in, day out. I care about what they say. I don't care about what Colin Cowherd says about Dabo. Colin Cowherd doesn't know shit about Dabo Swinney. Stephen A. Smith and the rest of them, they don't know. They don't know anything about him.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that makes sense. And the real test of that is if there was an issue with racism or race issues within that program, I don't think you'd be getting these players. Word would spread. You wouldn't be able to it would get out that this isn't a comfortable place for you. And I don't think all these great players would be signing up to go there because, like you said, all these players talk. Word would get out. That's not the place you want to go. So I'm not, nothing's perfect, but I don't think there's an issue there, or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing.
Just DeAndre Hopkins alone, because a lot of these other players you could say would go unheard because they're not such big names. DeAndre Hopkins is one of the biggest names in all of football, right now. And DeAndre Hopkins was the one that was leading the charge on social media to get some of these names of these buildings changed at Clemson, the Calhoun building, the Tillman building. These are terrible racist in history, and they're affiliated tightly with Clemson in the far past. And so DeAndre Hopkins was a part of leading the charge to get those names changed. But DeAndre Hopkins came to Dabo Swinney's defense directly on Twitter and said, he's definitely not a racist. This is one of the best men I've ever known in my life. He was like a father figure to me, and he taught me how to be a man. And he still calls me on a monthly basis. And I haven't been to Clemson, played for Clemson in 7 years. So this is the kind of person that Dabo Swinney is. It's not an act.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. But a part of this too, we try and not let football discussion bleed into politics and all the other crazy stuff that's going on.
Right.
But I think a part of this relates to what you were speaking to when we first started. I think there's a feeling that if you're like Christian or old school Catholic or something like that, I think that group is getting lumped into the idea that this is old school, that caused a lot of our societal problems, that got us where we are now. And I think religion in a lot of ways, especially Christianity, gets pushed into that as like a part of the old school problem. And I feel some of that going on because, like you said, that religion thing, that ain't that popular right now. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, you're a fan of a team that is literally a Christian college. I mean, Clemson's not that.
Yeah.
So you have a whole nother ball of issues as far as that goes.
Yeah.
I mean, how many Miami fans over the years have called you racist just for being a Notre Dame fan?
I don't know if they call me directly racist,
or you know what I'm saying. You know,
there was a lot of that, especially back in 2017. That was an interesting week on Twitter for me.
What about the Catholics and convicts whole thing?
Yeah. I mean that if you go back to that, there was a lot of offense taken of them painting us in that light. But I would like to add, if you want to act to me like those Miami teams were all sitting there doing their homework every night, you could kiss my ass. Because nobody can try and sell me that either.
So let me ask you a question. Because you're the one, I mean, listen, you are literally the Christian school. Clemson's not that. How do you think that affects the recruiting for Notre Dame? I think it was an advantage in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Isn't it an advantage now? Or not?
So
I'd say no.
Yeah. Here's how I see that. You're always gonna have your people like me that grew up Irish Catholic, went to Catholic high schools, that kind of thing. You're always gonna have that pool of people and families that are already bought in. Catholicism's a part of their childhood, their life, their faith. You already have that group. But here's the thing. What I like about Notre Dame's situation and philosophy is this is very out front. Okay. So when you're recruiting guys, it's not pushed. People recruit against Notre Dame all the time and tell these kids, if you go there, they're going to make you sit in church every day, twice a day. And you're going to have to, confess your sins and do all this stuff. You don't want to do that.
Right.
You just got to understand, if you're being recruited by Notre Dame, faith is built into the philosophy of the school, and it trickles down into every aspect of it, into the locker room. It's a part of it. And if you're not interested in that at all, or you hate it, or it's a turnoff, you're not going to be interested in Notre Dame.
Right.
You're just not.
So to me, on the surface, again, I get it because, I'm an Irish Catholic person. But on the surface, we were just talking about how that turns, what Dabo Swinney says in front of a microphone turns them off. That's one thing. But Dabo Swinney's not making his players go to confession and go to church on Sunday and take religious classes.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that hurts the recruiting for Notre Dame in this day and age? I think it probably does.
Well, here's my answer to that. If it does, it would be hard to know that, right? Like how would you end up in a situation where a kid doesn't want to take a visit there because he doesn't like that there's a big cathedral in the middle of campus.
Right. That's true. That's true.
You wouldn't necessarily know that.
Yeah.
And so I think this helps in some cases, and there may be some people that just don't buy into it at all. But here's another way I look at this with Notre Dame. It's not like you go there and they're going to try and make you a priest. Like, it's just kind of a moral framework.
I know
to work through.
I know that, but if you just talk about, if you were just to go interview somebody on the sidewalk that didn't know anything about anything, but they knew that Notre Dame was a Catholic school, they might think that though.
Yeah,
they might think that they're indoctrinating people there.
Yeah, they do. Well, I'm telling you, it's a documented fact. One of the best negative recruiting tactics against Notre Dame,
right,
is trying to tell these kids they're going to push this. It's overbearing. You don't want it. And I've really never heard of that being a problem with any kid on campus. That's the thing with Notre Dame. That's built in. There are no surprises. It's a Catholic Christian framework And it's just known. So if you really don't like that at all, you're not going to be interested. But how do I measure that? I don't know. But here's the big drawback. You said you didn't know if there was one. I have one that we live through all the time. The drawback of this is when you're rooted in this Catholic philosophy, they have the student guidelines for behavior. That's DULAC is what it's called. And it's a highly moral thing. All these things they expect you to do and not do on campus. They take it very seriously. It's a big deal to them. When you do that and you're looked at as this religious institution, you need to understand you just raised your bar of scrutiny and what's expected of you. Okay? Because if you're going to root yourself in this moral stance and try and purport your place that way, if you got kids getting in trouble, you got something bad that happened, the first thing people are going to say is that what happened to these holier than thou Catholics? I thought you guys were better than everybody else, you know?
See? And that's the direct line you can draw with Dabo Swinney as well, even though it's not a Christian school.
Yeah.
Is that he preaches the same thing in recruiting, and he does hold up to it. Which is why you've seen, during the Tommy Bowden years in particular, there's a lot of players getting in trouble, flunking out, getting, C's and D's. And that was, Dabo Swinney was an assistant at that time, and he saw that going on. And I think it bothered him. So when he got the head coaching job, he changed the culture. And people say, "Oh yeah, he changed the culture." Well, he brought Jesus in the culture. No, he changed the culture, and he changed it for the better. He held them accountable for their actions. He recruited that way. Grades. I mean, there's been no coach in the history of Clemson football that's had better academic standards than Dabo Swinney, and discipline standards.
Yeah.
And if guys don't live up to the very high standards that he sets, he'll bench you. It doesn't matter if you're Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence. You step out of line, he'll kick you off the team in a heartbeat. At least bench you.
Yeah.
Without a problem.
Yeah. And so I've talked on my show a lot about Notre Dame will have some issue or some kid does something stupid on the weekend, gets arrested, that stuff that happens in every college football program. And people will ask me, why is it blown up when it's Notre Dame? But if it's somewhere else, they don't even bat an eye. There's no news stories about it. That's why. Because when you are purporting that you're built in this religious framework, with that comes extra scrutiny. And when something goes bad, people act up. You should expect that they're going to say, "Oh, I thought you guys were all religious and had these good kids. What happened now? You're holier than thou thing." So that's just something that I embrace as a part of this. And whenever something bad happens, I know this is going to be turned around, kicked back at us. And I'm fine with that. And what I tell people is the idea isn't that Notre Dame is better than anybody else because they're built in that framework. All it is they just have a very moralistic outlook on college life as a framework that they would like everybody involved to try to live up to. Does that mean it's perfect? God knows it's not. You look at, and this involves my career as well, in the Arch Catholic Diocese in Chicago and Joliet, Catholicism's had its problems, right? They're not perfect. They have a lot of issues to clean up. All it is a moral framework they're trying to work through and develop young people to live through. If you don't like it, don't go to Notre Dame. And if you hate it, you're going to pile on us anytime there's an underage drinking ticket or a kid cheated on a paper. It's going to be, "Oh, I thought you guys were better than this."
Yeah.
It's just, it goes with it. So I tell people, some bad happens, it's going to be magnified because that's the entrance to the holier than thou angle.
It's a very similar situation to Clemson, even though Clemson's not a Christian school. Because once you put that framework out there, then they expect every single player to live up to that.
That's exact. And you're never going to be able to do that with a bunch of college kids. There's always going to be something that happens. It's a framework to strive to live through. It's not saying they're perfect and nothing bad ever happens.
So needless to say, I don't have any issue with faith being intertwined with college football or sports in general. If it works for that university, if it works for that team, I'm all for it. I do have a problem, however, with a school like BYU, and I don't have a problem with Mormons. So I want to make it about that. I mean, freedom of religion. If you're Muslim, Jewish, Mormon, Catholic, Christian, whatever it is, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But BYU is a special case here. They literally have written into their policy that they will not allow, gay people to be a part of their school. At least they can't be openly gay. I mean, obviously you can't test somebody's blood and tell if they're gay. They have to exhibit that or tell you that they're gay. So homosexuality is completely banned from their campus, and some other things that are pretty despicable too. And then that's, to me, that's living in the dark ages. And I can't even believe that's up. And I think that's the reason that they're not a part of a conference. And I know that Notre Dame, that's a different story. Notre Dame's independent for financial reasons and tradition reasons. The reason BYU isn't is because I don't think any conference would let them in. If Notre Dame wanted to join any conference tomorrow, they would be let in for financial reasons. And because they're, I think they're considered to be a moral school, and people know they're transparent. But BYU, on the other hand, I don't think anybody wants to be affiliated with them.
Interesting. Yeah. And then you get into that whole thing of like religious freedom. And, if that's what they believe and the people going there believe in that, then is that wrong? Because, it's not like you're there and then that's forced on you. You're choosing to embrace it. But that's an interesting angle you're bringing up. Like, I do wonder if these other...
That is bold-faced discrimination.
Are like, I don't know if we want to touch that.
I don't understand how the government doesn't step in with that. It's bold-faced discrimination to say that a gay person can't play football there.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I don't know too much about Mormon culture. Like I know some of the really strict stuff that they couldn't do or couldn't say, and that's tricky. And I don't know. That's a tough one, because do you really think that's a piece of it with these conferences?
I know. I would imagine that they could have easily joined the Pac-12 or the Big 12. I don't think either one of those conferences want anything to do with that. I mean, first of all, it's wrong. I mean, just morally, in my moral compass, I would say that's wrong, right? That's the same as saying that we're not letting black people in, or we're not letting Latino people in.
Yeah.
I mean, in this day and age, it's ridiculous. But aside from that, it's a publicity nightmare for any conference to accept that in their conference.
Yeah, that makes sense then. And so the flip side of that is they would say, that's my personal religious beliefs. Who are you to tell me that's wrong? Like, then you're getting into that big debate.
So here's what I'll do then. I'm going to start, and this is obviously not happening. This is completely hypothetical. Joe Schmo is going to start a college in Mississippi, and due to our religious beliefs, we're only letting white people in. How's that going to work out?
Ooh, good luck.
Okay, well, what's the difference then?
I can't answer that. But let me ask you this. Maybe I've missed this, but is this a very public thing? Like, are people talking about that and writing about this?
Yes.
Or is it just kind of like I just always assumed maybe this is wrong.
This
BYU's a little different. They do their own thing out there, and that they're just kind of out there. I don't know.
This is very publicly known. Very publicly known. Yes.
So maybe, I don't know. I mean, how does it ever change then, unless somebody makes them, or if enough people quit donating? Like, what changes that other than governmental force?
Here's the thing. I'm assuming, and I don't know this, I'm assuming that they could be sued for this, at least civilly. If let's say a gay person just is on the football team and gets kicked off because they found out he was gay, I'm assuming he could probably take him to court and win some money from him. But I don't think that they're overtly saying that's the reason he got kicked off the team. But it's well known. It's not a secret that they just do not want homosexuality from any of their students. And if you are homosexual, you better be completely quiet about it. Otherwise, they're going to find a way to kick you out, even if it's unjustified.
Yeah, that's a tough way to live, man, especially as we move forward and the times we're in. And yeah, and like you said, it's almost that kind of cocoon feels like a kind of a time warp. You know what I mean? Where there's just no progression.
I mean, I think it's even written in their in their bylaws. You know,
and like
their unofficial bylaws. They haven't changed it, so they're not even really hiding it.
Even Catholicism has slowly moved towards embracing that more, and especially in some progressive metropolitan areas, they're a lot more open to that. So I know
but here's the difference.
Even Catholicism's moving more open.
There's no way that an openly homosexual person would get denied from Notre Dame entrance just because they were homosexual. There's no way.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, that's accurate. And, there's an interesting dichotomy at Notre Dame right now, because they're rooted in some of these old school Catholic principles and all that. But they're on the forefront with Black Lives Matter. Brian Kelly's out there marching right down campus with the players, like fully embracing it, talking about it. They're very forward thinking in those type of ways. But I can't speak for the Mormon situation. I don't have an answer to you for that.
Yeah, and I don't really know much about Mormons in general. I'm just speaking specifically about the university, Brigham Young University. And they are, man, I think that's going to have to change at some point.
I would be surprised if there's not eventual litigation somewhere.
I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised that the NCAA hasn't really banned them from, with sanctions.
Do you really think they want anything to do with this? They're not going to touch this.
And the climate we're living in today, everything's under fire. And this, first of all, I believe that this should have been under fire anyways. It's really despicable way to live in 2020 as a university. But like you said, they're a private university. They can make their own rules.
Yeah.
And I don't really know the law as far as what goes when you're a private university and a religious university on top of that. You can do a lot of things under the guise of religion. And I think that's sort of the way they're getting away with this. And but the NCAA doesn't have to adhere to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is, people are going to say, okay, well, that's their stance. You would know that when you're looking at colleges. And if you're gay, then you wouldn't go there because they're not open to you. So then you just don't go there. That's your choice. But that's not how the world works. There's kids on that campus who go there because mom and dad went there. There's pressure. They want them to go there. It's a good academic school, but they can't be their real self because of this. So that's not a good argument either, is if you don't like it, don't go there, because that's just not how it works. So I don't know what the end game is with that, but as we progress towards more openness, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah. But outside of Clemson and Notre Dame, and of course BYU that's not Christianity, that's Mormonism, but can you think, and I know there are some, smaller private colleges, but I'm talking about major universities here. Is there another one that you can think of that falls into that category right now?
Well, Boston College.
Well, TCU, Texas Christian University. That's another one.
Yeah, TCU. But Boston College is, that's why they call Notre Dame, people call BC backup college. If you want to go to a Catholic school, you didn't get into ND, you go to BC, backup college, baby.
Right.
And
I would say a lot of the ACC teams, I think that there's a lot of Catholic roots to Pitt as well.
Yeah. And here's the other thing, and I take crap for this all the time. People don't believe this. And I always say it. A part of when I get asked, why is there so many Notre Dame people all over the place that didn't even go there? Some of them never even stepped on campus.
That's because of the TV contract, John.
Okay, that's a part of it. Okay, like your Cubs, WGN, Nationwide, I get it.
And a lot of it does have to do with the Catholic aspect of it. Yes.
You're talking about heritage and religion. And those are two extremely important things to people's families and histories.
It is.
And people are drawn to a place that they feel represents publicly their people. It ain't like, John, why do you like University of Illinois? Because I grew up in Illinois. There's a lot more to it than that when you're a Notre Dame person.
There's a reason that my grandfather and my uncle both went to Notre Dame out of state, is because they were Irish Catholic, period.
Yeah. But people don't want to hear that. They think that's BS or whatever. And I'm not saying it as in we're better than you. We offer more to you in your fanhood. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it happens to be that this place isn't rooted in geography. It's rooted in these ideals. And that reaches a lot further than the little place in Indiana by the lake.
So this comes full circle back to what we were talking about originally with Dabo Swinney and Clemson. All the people out there that are annoyed by Dabo Swinney saying Jesus this, Jesus that, God this, faith that, face this, face that. It's working. It's working. And it's going to continue to work. And I think that's another thing that really pisses them off, is not only are they annoyed by the God talk, but they're also annoyed that it works.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I obviously don't have a problem with it. And I don't see anything wrong with teaching love and acceptance and respect and all those sort of things, whether it's under the guise of religion or not. I don't see a problem with it. I think that really should be the standard instead of the,
And see, that was the next thing. We're getting good at this, because that's the next thing I was going to say to you is the biggest dirt you have in a guy is that he's saying like, we're all God's children, treat everybody well. And it's like, screw you, buddy. Like, we don't want that.
If you listen to Dabo Swinney talk, he always, the one resounding theme outside of, because all people hear is God, 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 or faith, faith, faith. That's all. That's what their ears hear.
Yeah.
But the thing you listen to him over and over and over, the resounding theme is love. He's preaching love. He's always preaching love.
You know what, man? I think people are just so jaded. They hear that and they roll their eyes. I really think that's like a part of their, like, what? Give me a break.
Well, it's a pretty sad
stuff again.
It's a sad world we live in when a guy preaches love and acceptance and gets branded as some sort of phony.
But that's where I was going to go with that too. Is it really the worst thing in the world for a guy to be like, we should all think about, treating each other well and embracing each other and bringing each other up? Like, seriously, like, we have all these other problems going on. That's what you're going to nail a guy for? Seems a little bizarre to me, but I get the feeling a lot of the Dabo stuff is a lot of people are jealous he's got it going right now, and you're the target. When you're doing what he's doing, you become a target. And I want to finish on the Saban stuff you were talking about. I get asked all the time, he'll snap at some reporter and it's on Twitter. And I get a bunch of tweets saying, could you even imagine if Brian Kelly said this, what would be going on right now? And my response is, when you're a winner, you get to do what you want. When you're a proven winner, you get to do what you want. You call the shots. You pull the strings on the media. When you're that guy, you could say whatever you want at that podium, because ultimately you're a big time winner. And that's why Brian Kelly can't get away with stuff. He didn't win it. He hasn't won anything. Yeah. That matters.
Of course, winning matters. Winning matters. And as far as the people that hate Dabo Swinney, like you said, just because they're winning, now that Dabo Swinney might not like that. Clearly he doesn't, because he's obviously, very defensive about that whole situation.
Yeah.
But people like me, I love it.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if you're not being hated on, you're not doing anything right. And that's true for college football teams. That's true for people on YouTube.
I was going to say that's true for you and me doing what we do.
Yeah. Even though I'm a nobody, nobody's watching me. I mean, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But if there's 5 people that hate on this video, that's 5 people that care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, sorry I couldn't help you out with making you care enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I don't know, man. It's a tricky discussion, and it's wrapped in the fabric of all the unrest going on now. And it's a weird time. And I don't know what the next handful of years is going to look like, and how sports are going to change with the cultural change. everything that's going on, these power dynamics. I just think maybe we're in for some real changes here, and I don't know where it's going to go.
Well, nobody knows where this is going to go. This has been a crazy year for not just football, but for real life. And I still think no matter how much time goes on, there's always going to be a place for faith in sports. There always has been. I think that there always will be.
Oh, now wait. I do have a problem with this.
Okay.
I do have a problem, and I did an entire segment on this topic. What I don't like is after some game, you hit the game-winning shot, and then
the first thing you do is thank God. Is that what you're going to say?
You're going to say, you know what? God made this possible, all this stuff. If that's true, why doesn't God like your opponent? Does he hate that team that didn't win?
Well, that's the pessimistic way to look at it.
No, I want somebody who loses to get up there and say, God made me lose. If God made you win, he made the other team lose. So, it's the same thing. If he helped you win, he had to help them lose.
John, what kind of Catholic are you, sir? This is despicable.
That has always driven me nuts. I want a guy to get up there and blame God for losing.
How about God didn't make it happen either way? God gave you the will and the power to make it happen. And your opponent obviously didn't have the will or the power to do it the way
because he's going to hell.
No, God knows.
No, but it's always been a pet peeve of mine. Like, nobody blames God when it doesn't go well. They only thank him when it does.
I love when the rappers get up there to accept their award, for their song, and they thank God for the song that they made. And their song talks about murdering 18 people and raping 3 women. It's like, what? God made that possible? Yeah. What is this?
Amen.
Anyway. So I think that we were supposed to cover 3 subjects, but we spent 50 minutes.
I can't believe that
on this subject. So I don't think we should go into anything else because this will be a 2-hour-long segment. So we might have to listen. We're always looking for content. So now we have something for next week to talk about. Yeah.
No, but this is, I like that we delved into something that isn't the most comfortable topic, and there's a lot of nuance to it. And I think it's good because here's the thing. We don't get anywhere with any of this unless we talk about it and try and hash it out, talk about the different angles. Like, that's how you get somewhere or produce change, but some of these topics are not going to be comfortable, and they're going to come up more and more as we progress. And people better be ready to adapt, or I think there's going to be some rude awakenings.
Well, unfortunately, I have never shied away from talking about controversial things. I mean, what I do is definitely college football related. And so I always wanted to relate it back to that. I have gone off the path a couple of times. And if there's something that really gets me angry or upset, I will talk about it on YouTube, even if it's not college football related. But that never really seems to work out in my favor. But at the end of the day, we're all human, John. And if I have a platform to express my feelings on a certain situation, I'm going to do it. What's right's right and what's wrong is wrong. That's the way I feel.
Well, and here's the other thing too. And I like this about your work, and I try and do this with mine. We don't just throw stuff out there just to do it without thinking about it, right? There's thought put into it. There's a theory behind it. There's a philosophy. There's a logic to the ideas we bring up and talk about. I think these days, man, everybody's quick to just put out that tweet of just whatever comes to mind and then fire it off and it's out there. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're both pretty careful with, if we bring something up, there's some thought behind it,
Sure. And it's not just the gotcha thing. And it's not like on ESPN where it's just, trying to get people riled up. There's real feelings and opinions behind what we say. That's the reason I love YouTube more. I watch more YouTube than I do, mainstream TV. I mean, that's just, especially when it comes to sports.
Yep. Yeah. You know what I've shifted towards the last handful of years? I would so much rather find an independent podcast about a topic I'm interested in, where I know there's no BS company line crap, and you're just going to get some straight talk and not all the fluff.
Yes.
So I love finding people like that because they're not beholden to anybody else.
Sure.
Don't say this, don't do that, don't go there. And that's the benefit guys like you and I do have on our platforms. We don't have to answer to anybody. I say what I think, and I'm only worried about me.
It's literally the reason I do this.
Yeah, it's freeing, isn't it? It feels very freeing to know we can say whatever we want.
I've gone on YouTube and just, come across some guy's video. He has like 50 subscribers, maybe 20 people watching him, and been more entertained than watching whatever's on TV.
Yep.
Because the guy has done his research and has a real opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And that ties into actual sports too. And I tell Notre Dame people this all the time on my show. If I really want to know what people think about what's going on in Notre Dame, the last people I'm going to go to is go read the beat writers that cover Notre Dame and all the in-house media, because their whole lives revolve around access.
It's all about clicks.
Yep. And those people don't want to piss off Brian Kelly because you're not going to get access to that interview you wanted.
That's right.
So I tell people that's all fluff. Those are the last people, if you want the truth, you go to is in-house media. People got to be smart enough to recognize that, though.
It's true.
Because their whole lives depend on access, and they're not going to piss these people off.
You know what the best part of this pandemic has been? And there's been nothing great about it.
What is it? Tell me one of the great things about it.
The greatest thing has been watching ESPN and Fox Sports try to adapt and do what we do. We do in-home shows better than they do in-home shows, and they're ESPN. You seen them? They got these microphones. They don't work.
Yeah.
The camera's all fuzzy.
Their kids are in the background. Their hair's sticking out. They're in their underwear.
They're actually hitting the mute. You can't hear them. It's like, it's great.
Yep.
It's great.
And the first few weeks COVID hit and they did the lockdowns, they had all these doctors and stuff on TV, and there's like a 6-second lag in all the video. They're all pixelated. I'm going, this is like Fox and CNN, and you can't figure this out.
Yeah, and they don't have any hair and makeup.
Yeah, exactly. You see what they really look. We're all natural, baby. This is what you get. This is as good as it gets.
Yeah, put me in hair and makeup. Come on.
And the older we get, the worse this is going to look.
Why do you think I wear a hat and sunglasses most of the time? I'm trying to cover this face up. What are you talking about?
Trying to cover my balding head up. Oh, man.
All right. Listen, John, this has been amazing and fantastic.
This has been, this was an interesting topic, and I'm glad we did it, though, because I think it did warrant some time. And so I'm glad we addressed it.
I am too. So episode 4 of Always Pigskin Show is in the books. I think we hit another home run. This just keeps getting, it's like Babe Ruth, just keeps getting better and better as time goes on.
Just keep swinging for the fences, drinking those beers and hanging out with the women, just like the Babe did,
Exactly.
And then for next week, this will be a good one, though. And it's one of the things we didn't get to, a little tease. We're going to talk about maybe some dark horse playoff teams. Okay. And I want to see if we overlap on any of these or not, and our philosophies that went into picking some of these teams. Because for me, I found some trends.
Oh, I definitely have an opinion on this, and you might know one of the dark horse teams very, very well, in my opinion.
I tried to avoid that one. I will save it. But I tried to focus on other worlds, not my own. Let's just say that.
I think the fact that I even call them a dark horse is going to offend some Notre Dame fans.
You know what, though? Aren't they always going to be a dark horse because they're not in a conference?
We'll talk about it next week, John. Don't get ahead of ourselves.
All right.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
It's been great. See you, John.
Peace out.